Good news, everybody! It has finally happened. For the first time in about 2 or 3 years, I have actually bought a new jumper. You think I'm joking? Sadly, I'm not. But perhaps more importantly for you, what we have here is an RTX 4080 gaming PC for just £20 a month. Sounds a little bit suspicious to me, doesn't it? But in actual fact, you're still getting all of the features. You're getting DLSS 3.0, you're getting the latest ray tracing, loads and loads of performance, including up to 240 Hz refresh rates. But of course, there is a little bit of a catch because this is actually running over the cloud. This is the brand new tier of GeForce Now called Ultimate, and it does cost £20 a month. So the question is this actually any good? And should you consider either switching to GeForce Now or adopting it if you don't already have a gaming PC rather than saving up for one? It's a very intriguing question now, isn't it? And it's one that we will be answering after a short word from this video's sponsor.
AlphaSync is the place to get the pre-built system of your dreams. Without any knowledge on how to build a PC, AlphaSync gets you top branded components at all budgets, lovingly put together right here in the UK. Either choose a master-crafted AlphaSync specification or design yours from scratch. The choice is entirely up to you. Get your game on today with that link down below.
Let's waste absolutely no time at all and jump straight into it. Right off the bat, I am actually extremely impressed with how this feels. Because if you think about it, this is pretty much the worst sort of title really for game streaming. This is multiplayer, this is a first-person shooter, and it's just not really the sort of game that lends itself to being piped down the network, because it's all about the way the game feels. You want it to feel as responsive as possible, so when you actually move your mouse and ultimately click and try and hit the enemy, then you can do just that without feeling like you're a little bit far behind. I mean, I first tested a system like this years ago, something like 2010, 2011, with OnLive, if you guys remember that. And that was kind of laughable, really, because even playing something like Tropico, the latency was borderline too bad that you couldn't even play a strategy game like this. So to be able to pump 240 FPS is very, very impressive. And it does feel like I am playing on this system, like genuinely. Whether it feels like I'm playing on a 240 Hz monitor, I mean, obviously it doesn't because this is 120 Hz. Even if it was, I still think the latency you would feel would obviously suffer from that inevitable internet-based delay. But I can see why they're bringing this out, actually. When I first heard the news, I thought it was a little bit confusing, but ultimately the latency that you're feeling here is very, very low and it is incredibly impressive. But let's up the stakes though and move across to a title I know a lot better than Destiny 2, some Apex Legends. And if there was ever a multiplayer title that I would say I would never play on the cloud, it would be this. So let's see how this actually fares. You can choose what settings you want all of these games to actually play at or use the Nvidia suggested ones. And for some reason, what they've picked for Apex Legends in competitive mode is awful. I mean, unless I'm missing something, why is everything at its absolute lowest? Texture streaming budget, none. This is a virtual RTX 4080. Why are you setting the settings that low? I get it for competitiveness, but textures, really? Oh, I probably should explain, by the way, the reason we have this open computer next to us is because we were testing some CPUs to see what the best gaming CPU is with this RTX 4090, and I just hadn't put it away yet. So yes, it is a little bit messy, but it is actually a very cool video. If you haven't already seen it, you can check that out at the top right corner of your screen, and it'll help you to save yourself some money. But here we go, jumping out of the plane, Apex Legends, let's go! And in terms of image quality, this is definitely not quite what I'm used to. Again, for a competitive game, it's fine, you can get used to it, but compared to like an RTX 3060 Ti or something like that, that's actually doing native rendering onto your screen, this definitely does not look anywhere near as good. So please do bear that in mind. You can choose other modes. You can actually do up to 4K 120 Hz now, which I have already tested. I'll show you a little bit later. But the image quality of that is really, really good. But obviously this is all about minimum latency, so compromises do have to be made. And again, it is remarkable just how low the latency is. Like, I moved this mouse ever so slightly to the left, and I'm seeing pretty much instant reactions. I can't say I've really actually experienced game streaming like this before. Like, I know I'm putting on my PC-centric enthusiastic voice, right? Maybe this sounds like a sponsored video. It really isn't. My history of game streaming has pretty much been, if you want to play single-player titles, then it's actually pretty good. But for multiplayer, it's not something I would recommend. But I have to admit, if you are in the situation where you can't have a fully fledged RTX 3060, 70 gaming PC, then actually, I would genuinely be happy to play multiplayer on this. And this particular mode I think this is pretty awesome. I mean, let's go and test this out properly. Let's go find someone and see if we can get some frags. I'm gonna go into try-hard PC-centric mode by actually standing in front of this lovely camera here. But with clever editing, you would never have known. Again, just as a reminder though, the image quality of this is a little bit funky. I think what you'll end up seeing on the YouTube video will be worse than what I'm seeing, because it's getting compressed and encoded twice, but it still looks a little bit, not blocky, just lacking detail and clarity. There was a tiny, tiny bit of stutter there, but definitely nothing of extreme concern. Oh, so being shot at, got him, thank you. If you turn all of the settings up to max, I did find it was slightly choppy at 1440p. I say choppy, not like crazy or anything like that, but you could definitely notice the latency was a bit lower and it was having to render more things and it was not coping quite as well. But again, in this competitive mode, it really does play like it's on a local PC. Oh, he's cocked it up big time there. He's absolutely cocked it up. That wasn't even my skills. It's not going well. This is not going well. Come on. That's one. Come on. Can he do the double? Can he do the double? Reload. No! And he hits the microphone. Not bad though. Got 2. Almost 4. Most damage of the team. Consider me impressed. To those that don't already know, by the way, GeForce Now is essentially like hiring your own computer in the cloud. You get access to, in this case, an RTX 4080 virtual rig. It's not actually a RTX 4080, but it more or less is the equivalent in terms of performance and features and what you're getting. The user interface itself looks like this. It isn't actually too bad, but I don't like how most of these games I don't actually own. You can simply go to My Library, see all, and then everything you can play on GeForce Now appears here. You can do filters as well, so Digital Store, Ubisoft, GOG, Epic. Why is it not coming up with anything? Okay, so you're filtering ones that are in both. Right? But a few quirks aside, it does do quite a good job of actually showing you everything you can play. Getting started is incredibly simple. You just sign up for a GeForce Now account. There are different plans depending on how much you want to spend and the visual quality and refresh rate and things like that you're after. And then you just sync up all of your different services. So here I've got Ubisoft, Epic Games and Steam, and then all of those games will appear. And then down here is streaming quality. And it's here that you're going to choose what sort of resolution and refresh rate you want. And if you're maybe limited in terms of your data every month, you can actually cap it, so while the image quality won't look as good, you know you won't be going over those limits. So here we've got the competitive mode that's now been upgraded in this new Ultimate plan for the 240Hz at 1080p. We can also get variable refresh rate as well and some form of G-Sync, but I've found that for whatever reason it hasn't actually seemed to pair up my side. I'm not sure if I'm doing something wrong, maybe it's in certain games, but I was fairly sure that I was supposed to get G-Sync actually on my monitor as well as from the back end, but it's been stuck on 120 this whole time. Maybe it's only in the competitive mode, and because we've been exceeding that, then we've been at 120 the whole time. That would explain it. But when I've tested it at 1440p and 4K, it doesn't seem to be matching the frame rate that we get from the game. So 62 FPS still said 120 on my monitor, but if this is a bug, I'm sure it will get fixed very shortly. NVIDIA actually recommend for most gamers that you use balanced, which has detected that for me, 1440p at 120Hz is going to be the sweet spot, because if we go up to 4K, it's more bandwidth to actually send across, and because you actually need to encode it at the NVIDIA server, decode it this side, it does increase the latency by some margin. It's still going to be fine for most titles, but this is where anything competitive, multiplayer, I would say it's still a little bit too high for me to play. You'd want to use that 1080p competitive mode for the best results. But I want to try out the brand new 4K 120 mode with VSync on adaptive and actually see how that performs in some ray tracing titles. Let's try some Cyberpunk. Now what you're seeing now is what we call in the business a pickup, because I had some issues with this earlier. For some reason there was a frame rate cap actually enabled and this was stuck at 45 FPS, and I was sort of like, oh, this is an RTX 4080 and it can't run Cyberpunk at high frame rate. I don't understand, but actually it can. So what I'm gonna do now is show you some Cyberpunk. This is running at the recommended settings that I don't actually think is with ray tracing, but it is still very, very impressive because this is running at 4K 120 FPS, and I must admit, this is another title that I honestly can't notice the fact that we're not running on a PC locally, and that's incredible for me. It just feels like we're actually using this full system, and this isn't something I experienced in some other titles running at 4K, but I suppose you obviously need to get that proper 120 FPS. I think it's amplified. The higher the frame rate you get, the better the latency, not only because obviously it's running at a higher frame rate, but because the latency through the pipeline from the internet is definitely vastly improved. So I think if you're able to actually try this for yourself, you'll be dead impressed, especially if you're coming from like a console or something that's running this at 30 FPS. So to say that this is a better experience is an absolute whopper of an understatement. But let's actually go into the settings and show you what we have. So this is running DLSS 4K performance, which is actually a brilliant way to play. I must admit that I am surprised with how well DLSS works at 4K performance, but there you go. You can see a lot of the settings have actually been turned down though, which isn't disappointing. I mean, they want you to max out that refresh rate, but if we do go to Ray Tracing Ultra, we'll make sure DLSS is set to performance. What is this going to do to our frame rate? Remember that DLSS 3 is actually supported, but unfortunately isn't actually available just yet. So you will get a higher frame rate once that update comes out. But you can still see that this is very much 4080 levels of performance. I know it's not going to be identical, but is anyone really going to complain with everything turned up when you're getting 94 FPS? And to be honest, in terms of the way that the game feels, I wouldn't say it's quite as smooth because the frame pacing is going to be slightly off. Bear in mind we're receiving 120 FPS stream. I did get it confirmed, by the way, and it is only the 1080p mode that does actually have decent compatibility at the moment. Hopefully this will change, but for the time being, you're going to have to make do with a solid 120 stream. But this is still a remarkably good experience. And if you are playing this on like a really thin and light laptop or a Mac or something, I think it's going to blow you away. But let's press on to one of the other new features, which is ultra-wide support. Oh yes, there we go. And once again, here we go. And immediately the image quality here is so much better than it was in the 1080p competitive mode. Not only because we've got extra resolution, but the extra immersion from the ultra-wide definitely does make quite a difference. It's how I like to play, but you do miss some vertical top and bottom resolution in certain titles. So the most die-hard competitive people don't normally recommend them, but I think for most people, they do come highly recommended actually. In terms of outright latency, this definitely isn't quite as good as the competitive mode, but I must admit it is miles better than the 4K 120 mode. I'm surprised really. It definitely doesn't feel like I'm steering the character or anything like that. It feels just like I'm playing a game of Apex Legends, to be honest, but maybe at a slightly lower frame rate than we actually are. Probably about 60 to 80, I'd say, is how it feels. Maybe like a decent gaming monitor, but not a top-end one. Unfortunately, one thing I am noticing is a bit of stutter. It's consistent and like, I think you could get over it, but obviously the point is you don't want to get over it. It's like micro stutter. So I imagine it's something to do with the frames being encoded and then decoded somewhere in the pipeline. It is very difficult to work it out when you're playing games from the cloud. It's just quite annoying, to be honest. Like, it's like every now and then, slight hitch, slight hitch, slight hitch. Maybe it's because this is pre-release. I have a feeling that this is going to improve over time, but it is worth noting that this is not quite as flawless as it was in the competitive mode, but it's still very good. I mean, I don't think I'd have a problem actually playing this, because it's not like we're getting huge frame drops or anything like that. It's just like a slight bit of, well, micro stutter. But the proof is going to be in the pudding. Can I actually get some frags? Oh, yes he can. Yes he can. With a 2x scope, no less. Hello, son. Hello, son. Hello, son. No! Oh, there's too many of them. That's a shame, that. That is a shame. So then, GeForce Now, what's my verdicts? Is this something that is the next generation of PC gaming? I think what we have is very impressive, but it's still not necessarily what I'd recommend to most people, purely because not everyone has the absolute best internet connection, and especially for multiplayer titles, I don't think I would ever be truly comfortable playing something like this when it streams from the cloud. There are some big advantages though. Firstly, there's no upfront fee. Obviously you need to buy the game, but something like Apex is free to play anyway, and I love the fact that this PC right here, the one that you can't actually see anymore, has been completely silent this whole time. Like, that is really impressive. And while £20 a month might sound quite steep, obviously compared to actually buying a gaming PC, that is way cheaper, Plus, you're not actually having to draw all of the electricity to actually run your gaming PC, which I didn't used to mention, but I think it is definitely worth mentioning now that that is going to add up. So you are saving yourself some money. So actually, I don't think the price is a concern. What might be a concern though is game support, because as we saw, not absolutely everything in your library is going to be playable through GeForce Now. It's getting better and better, and they're keen to tell me that games that were once not supported are coming back, but the fact remains it's not going to be as flexible as a proper Windows PC. And bearing in mind that the only multiplayer mode I would say is borderline indistinguishable from an actual local PC is the 1080p competitive mode, well, the image quality on that is lacking a little bit, it's fair to say. And if you do want to buy something like an RTX 3050 or maybe like a used graphics card, then getting Apex to run in 1080p mode at 144 Hz isn't actually that difficult. Yes, it's definitely going to cost you a lot more than £20 a month, but £20 a month times 12 is what? £240, which is obviously a lot, and it's not £240 that you're going to be able to carry into your next year and maybe keep upgrading, and obviously the PC gaming experience isn't going to be the same. But if you're the right customer, I do think it definitely is very impressive and is worth considering. If you have a Mac, it's a complete no-brainer, and if you do want to access maybe ray trace titles, or you've just bought yourself a fancy new Samsung or LG TV and you don't have a gaming PC or console and you just want to test it out, then obviously I think it's a brilliant option if you're on one of those platforms. Just be aware of the limitations, be aware it's not exactly the same as having an RTX 4080, despite the whole naming thing. And while it definitely is very impressive and is getting better and better all of the time, it's not as tried and tested as a good old gaming PC, especially if your internet isn't actually as good. I think the perfect person for this would be a university student, like my partner, who actually is running a Mac at the moment, and she wants to play, I think it's Planet Zoo. I'm not sure if that's actually on GeForce Now. Yes, it is, Planet Zoo. She could play Planet Zoo on her Mac in university and not have to worry about boot camp, storage, anything like that, and still get everything turned up as high as you possibly can do it, which is cool. But then again, internet connections, especially at universities, are flaky. I mean, I can't even always manage a proper video call with her. So whether this would work would actually be an interesting test. Maybe this is something we should actually test. If you'd like to hear this, then let us know down in the comment section below, or, you know, just call me Thea if you want to actually test this out. But let me know what you guys think of GeForce Now. Do you think it is something that is worth considering? Do you already have it? Have you tried it? What do you make of it? Let me know down in the comment section below, but absolutely smash the like button if you've enjoyed this video. Get yourself subscribed, and of course, if you do want to grab yourself a PC-centric mouse mat, less than 300 units available, then you can go and get this. Link is down in the description below.
And while you're down there, be sure to check out AlphaSync. AlphaSync brings you a worry-free PC gaming experience with a huge range of custom-built gaming PCs. With a 4.8 rating on Trustpilot and free next-day delivery available on selected builds, why not let AlphaSync take all of the stress out of PC gaming? Get started today with the link down below.
But thank you so much for watching this video. I'll catch you in the next one.